Welcome to the Gadget Man, episode 156. Is society ready to adopt electric cars? This morning I'm going to be speaking to Quentin Willson, motoring journalist, TV presenter and parent, and find out what his views on whether we are ready to adopt electric cars. First question I have is from Manuel. He is concerned that if he buys an electric car, it will be less eco-friendly than his diesel because of the manner in which the electric motor is manufactured.
Well, that's kind of nonsense, really. And there's a lot of myths surrounding this. And the Kia research picked this up, that people don't know enough about electric cars, and there's an informational issue here. But if you're talking about mining in the Democratic Republic of Congo, cobalt and things like that, it's not brilliant, agreed. But electric cars are made usually in green factories with renewable energy, and your diesel car will have been made in a factory that's powered probably by coal and very intensive. Then you've got to get the diesel out the ground, the oil out the ground. You've got to refine it. You've got to then ship it. You've got to transport it to the station. So the idea that an old diesel or petrol car can be greener than an electric car is just nonsense. And I mean, the numbers, it worries me that I possess this information, but over 80,000 miles, a petrol and diesel car will emit 32.2 tons of CO2. And an electric car over the same mileage age will do 23 tons of CO2, and that's before you cost in all the transportation and refining of the petrol and diesel. So sorry, Emmanuel, it just doesn't apply.
Yeah, what he's done is as is quite common with these kind of forums, is he's cited a report which is on a website which is difficult to confirm the validity of it. So he's talking about German battery manufacture which is being powered by coal. But as far as I'm aware, Tesla's plans, for instance, are to build a gigafactory in Berlin, which I assume their aim is to make it from using renewable energy.
Oh, completely. And I mean, look, if Elon Musk knows one thing, he knows how important it is that you can't replace pollution and put it in another place by powering electric cars by coal-fired power stations. That's impossible. And he's on the absolute vanguard of all this with the solar and everything. So it's interesting, though, that we've got these myths being almost propagated. And there is this kind of strange now fake news thing about electric cars that, you can't use them in car washes. That's just so daft. And the fact that, the batteries are going to be a toxic hazard for generations to come. Where does this sort of thing come from? And I'm not one for conspiracy theories, but there's quite a body of pushback against the whole industry. And it does worry me that this stuff still has credence.
Yeah, it is a concern. I have been driving and testing electric cars, alternative fuel cars, for the last 5 or so years myself, and I find it difficult to understand where this information comes from as well. So I'm with you on that. Chris has asked, do you think that the technology, such as the autopilot type technology that are currently in sort of a few cars, whether that is likely to roll out into electric cars as a standard in the next few years? Or will it be restricted to higher end?
I think it's all about cost, and I think the autopilot's okay, but the idea that we'll all be driving around in autonomous cars, that's a long way down the road. And that's what people really think autopilot is the precursor for. Even Musk says it's at least 10 years away. And I think everybody I talk to at all the car companies say it's probably longer, 15 years. And then you've got to get the infrastructure working. You can't have rubbish signs and poor lines on the ground, because the LiDAR and the radar's got to kind of pick all this stuff up. So I don't think we'll see autonomous cars for a long time yet, and I think your autopilots they'll percolate down, sure, but I don't think they'll be as definitive as Musk.
Yeah, thank you. Graham has asked. He lives in a terraced house with no drive or off-road parking. How is he going to be able to reliably charge his car on a nightly basis if there is nowhere for him to plug into in his own home?
This is a great question, and it concerns 30% of people in the UK. It's 70% in London. If you haven't got off-street parking or charging, then you can't really have an electric car. So what we need to do, and again, I've been pushing hard with the government for this, is EV hubs. So you have in communities, in schools, in supermarkets, these rapid charging hubs that people who don't have the on-street charging facility can take their car, plug it in for half an hour, 40 minutes, and then it's ready to go. And they can have batteries, large batteries the size of a shipping container as well. So you can modify the demand. So all this kind of infrastructure technology, it's there, and you can string it all together. But we just need the political will. And here's the thing: the understanding, Matt, from government ministers that we need to do this. And for me, and the Kia research picked this up as well, it's the democratization of the electric car, which is so important. We cannot carry on having them as a middle-class plaything where you've got your electric car and then you've also got your Range Rover for long journeys. Everybody must have the right and the ability to drive a zero-emission car. And I'm absolutely adamant on that. And at the moment, it's skewed really to large income earning people. And we need to bring it right down to communities who want to be, zero emission and help the environment.
Do you think that could be achieved by government grants or more generous government grants? I know there was the plug-in grant, which was reduced, wasn't it? Which was a real shame. But do you think that needs to happen as well, or do you think it's not affordable by the government to do that?
You can't have it both ways, Matt. If you want, this fantastic electric car revolution, then you've got to understand that it's going to cost a lot, and we may be talking about hundreds of billions.
A bridge from Scotland to Ireland, perhaps.
Yeah, maybe two. And what we want is certainty. The public wants certainty. Car manufacturers want certainty. I want certainty. I want to know that they are going to build an infrastructure fit for the 21st century that is future-proof for the bigger, larger car batteries that are coming, the 100 kilowatt, 150, maybe even 200 kilowatt batteries. And they aren't marooned with this kind of poor thinking. The biggest problem I have with government is that not enough people drive electric cars. I've been in a House of Commons meeting and a House of Lords one and said, right, okay, how many people here actually drive an electric car? And there's nobody. It's just, me and a little baroness who's always in the slow lane because she's afraid of running out of juice. So get that understanding is so important. And Kia have really flagged this up in this research, which is 3,000 people, and it's robust, that, we are anxious about this, and we do want to have much more certainty and security from the government. And they're giving us these cliff edge choices, no more new cars, petrol vans or diesel cars by 2035 or maybe even 2032. Will give us an option, give us a reason to change our behavior, and then we will. But the two most significant things in this survey are your fear of not having enough infrastructure and your fear of running out of batteries. So that proves that despite all the virtue signalling, government has to do better at this.
There also seems to be, from what I can gather from my questions, is a lack of understanding about what this switchover will be. That I get the impression people tend to think that they're going to have to suddenly stop driving their existing cars on a particular date when the ban comes into policy. And it, even though when I've explained that no, you can carry on keeping your own car, and then we also have people that are saying, but it's surely going to drive the price of petrol up. It's going to be expensive for us to keep our existing cars at that point, but too expensive to buy a new one. So we're stuck in a rock and a hard place. So there is this kind of whole mix of concerns.
And it's not being properly explained to people. Absolutely right. The ban, and here, let's do this for the record, Matt, the ban concerns new vans and cars powered by diesel and petrol after 2035 or earlier 2032. You will still be able to drive your petrol and diesel car. Nobody's going to stop you. There may be an increase in fuel due to discourage use, but then that's another thing I do with my Fair Fuel campaign, and that affects cost of living, and we need to keep the cost of living right down. The thing that worries me is that the the government have said that they are not going to permit the sale of hybrids after that cut-off date. And I think that's wrong-headed, but what do I know? So people must feel that, that they don't have to stop driving their cars, that you will be using these petrol and diesel cars for decades to come, probably. And you may even see a spike in their values. Who knows? Electric car values have certainly gone up, second-hand ones, because of demand. So
they certainly seem to retain their value, don't they?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You look at, some of the market-leading ones, and they're up 17% in January, and I think 24% in February so far. So, yeah, you'll and there's another myth that they cost more than petrol and diesel cars. Actually, if you factor in all the tax breaks, the benefit in kind, the fact that if you're a company, you can claim 100% of the cost back against corporation tax and profits and salary sacrifice, then the money you'll save on fuel and servicing. I think we've passed a watershed moment where an electric car could even be cheaper than a petrol and diesel car. Nobody's really done the sums because of that depreciation thing. The way you see these cars hanging on to their value, and the replacement cycles are much, much longer. You keep your electric car for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, then I think it's a really interesting sum to have done.
One thing that, in fact, my wife highlighted to me was that if you look at currently the hybrid cars, that there seems to be this whole mix of hybrids that are now being promoted. So we have mild hybrids, plug-in hybrids, self-charging hybrids. Do you not think that in some way that might confuse people that, okay, I want to buy a hybrid in the short term or lease a hybrid, but hang on a second, I'm being told that there are a whole number of different hybrids that I can have. Do you think that makes it slightly unclear to people when they're looking to buy a car, that are they buying the right kind of hybrid?
You're absolutely right. People don't understand enough, and the point of sale of where you buy your electric car isn't the right place, because usually the salesman wants to sell you a diesel. So we really do need, as a society and as a government, to start communicating these messages better and get people to understand what is the best car for you. And everybody's needs are different, and there is no charging infrastructure in certain areas. So why would you buy a battery only car? You would buy a hybrid, and that makes perfect sense. But getting this stuff across, I think, is really important. And here's the irony: kids seem to know much more about this than parents. They really, in this research, they are the if you'll pardon the pun, the drivers behind this moment of change. And parents are reacting to the pressure from their kids, and I feel it from mine, that you've got to do something and you've got to be as green as possible. And in a way, that's great, really, because it comes from an innocence. And our generation have kind of used up the resources of the world so profligately. And these kids want to change it all. And that's, I think, a great social force that we mustn't ignore.
That's right. There was one final question that I mustn't miss, which is important to most people, which is, Grant has asked me, so if we all move to electric cars, how on earth will the infrastructure cope with the demand for electricity?
Well, I've spoken to the National Grid at length about this, because it's an obvious question. And they say, when you get to, say, 50% penetration, we will still be okay, because we will have grid management. And don't forget that our offshore wind is now, renewables is probably 55% of electricity generation. You will need to rebuild what are known as the local circuits, which are the wires that come into your house and into your lamppost on the streets. And that's going to cost quite a bit. That's going to cost about 4 billion quid, because they will need to take much more power. They will be able to generate enough, because if we spend enough to have more renewables, more offshore, and a couple more nuclear power stations, yes, but that's kind of a long way off. 100% EV utilization may never happen, Matt. It's going to be a slow transition, just because it is. And I see 30, 40, 50% by maybe 2040. And then as we get to 2050, zero carbon, you might get 60, 70% EV penetration. It just depends how we roll out the infrastructure. But everybody in the electricity generating industry and the district network operators say that we can cope if we kind of just regenerate some of the old wiring, the old substations.
I think that it's really important as well for people to understand that the responsibility rests on our shoulders as much as it does government shoulders. And if by simply looking at installing solar panels on our homes and battery storage, which I think is an up and coming thing, battery storage in our homes as well, that where we can hold our own power to charge our vehicles ourselves, or we can run our households. We're not putting the strain on the grid at these high peak times ourselves, because we're storing energy ourselves. I think that's a really big thing that people need to start thinking about is battery storage really in their homes and solar energy.
Oh, I agree. My 21-year-old son, he never stops talking about it and showing me pictures of battery walls and the fact that we can be completely independent from the utility companies, the big villains. And I think that's absolutely right. And there are people who have these battery walls and the solar and are just, completely powering their house and their car on renewable energy. And whoa, that's just such a great goal.
Quentin, thanks ever so much for your time this morning. It's extremely interesting. I know my listeners will be happy to hear those answers. And yeah, thanks ever so much for your time.
Pleasure, Matt.
So that was Quentin Willson giving us his views on the impending adoption of the electric car in the next 15 years. So until next time, this is Matt Porter, the Gadget Man, signing off.